And now, straight out of Boston, Massachusetts, it's time for Entertainment Talk Nation, your number one entertainment talk show, discussing everything from the movies to video games and more. And now, here is your host, Robert Rosado.
Hello, everybody. Welcome to Entertainment Talk Nation. This is Rob. This is our very first podcast. I'm very, very excited to be here. With me today is our guest host, Xander Scullion. Xander, how are you, my friend? How you doing?
I'm doing really good, and I have to say it's an honor to be on your first episode and be your first special guest. That's really cool.
Oh man, I'm actually very happy to have you here because you've been, and we're gonna get into some game talk later on in the show, ladies and gentlemen. But Xander has been a very, very big help in my recent endeavor in collecting retro games. So I'm very excited to have him here. And this is ETN's very first podcast. So a lot of you listeners are probably from the YouTube channel, but for those of you who are brand new to listening to ETN, welcome. Glad to have you here. And this podcast, we're going to discuss some movies. In particular, we're going to talk about this year's movie roster up to this point and what remains for the rest of the year in terms of what's coming out. And then we're going to talk a little bit about one specific game called Alien Isolation, which seems to be getting a lot of rave and attention. However, there have been some media outlets and some game review websites that have not been very favorable, and they've been getting a lot of backlash, and we're going to get into that. But let's first talk about movies. Now, I know, Xander, you've seen a couple of movies this year. I think you mentioned to me you saw Spider-Man and obviously Godzilla, which is a big one on the channel. Everybody likes Godzilla. So from the movies you've seen so far, just on those alone, how would you grade this year based on what's been out and what you've seen versus last year in 2013?
You know, honestly, I can't remember a movie I saw in 2013 in theaters. I've seen more movies this year than I have last year, so and it's still a mixed bag. Like some movies that came out in 2014, I have a love and hate relationship with.
Like which ones?
One of them would be mainly, cause I'm a huge Spider-Man fan. I wasn't a huge fan of The Amazing Spider-Man 2.
Yeah. A lot of people weren't. Go ahead. A lot of people weren't a fan of this movie.
Yeah, I loved the first Amazing Spider-Man. I was kind of hesitant about such an early reboot. I was just like, oh my gosh. But, I watched it and I thought the guy, that played Spider-Man, he played it very well, and he was kind of a dick, which, and that's kind of how Spider-Man is very sarcastic, and, he played that part very well. And I saw that, and then when I saw the second one, it was like the second one, they focused on all the minor things, and all the major things was like the last 15 minutes of the movie. Right.
Yeah, and I love Spider-Man as well, and obviously a big fan of Sam Raimi's first series. And I agree with you. I felt that it was a little bit rushed to be rebooting it, but I thought the first movie was really good. I do like Andrew Garfield's Spider-Man / Peter Parker a lot better than Tobey Maguire. And not to say that Tobey Maguire did bad, I just think Andrew Garfield brought a whole different dimension to the character. He just brought a little bit more of the comic character into it, I felt. And the second one, I didn't necessarily hate it. When I did the review on YouTube, I was, I felt that it wasn't better than the first one. I know I mentioned that, but I didn't think it was as bad as a lot of people made it out to be. I do understand some of the, they lost the charm of the first one. A lot of that got lost in this shuffle to include so many villains, and at the same time, try and promote the future of the franchise. So I think by doing that, they sacrificed a lot of what made the first one really good.